You are about to cross into a world where fear is real. Real stories, unexplained phenomena, where the supernatural lurks in the shadows. From the portal of dread.
Today's story, the portal that should never have been opened. Greetings, spine-chilling visitors, a most chilling welcome to the portal of dread, where the most unsettling tales awaken. Prepare yourselves to traverse the boundary between the tangible and the inexplicable. Dim the lights, don your headphones, and settle in. For tonight together, we shall delve into a fresh chapter of terror. Are you prepared for the unknown? Then hit like, subscribe, and leave your comment proclaiming, "I am not afraid." Now let us begin. Tonight, you will meet Richarles, an electrical engineer who believed he understood energy, until he unearthed a force far more sinister than any mere electricity. This is the true account of how a life-altering decision transmuted into the most profound nightmare imaginable. Before we proceed, should you harbor a fear of haunted abodes, dimensional gateways, or ancient rituals, perhaps it would be prudent to cease your journey here. But if you possess the fortitude to confront the unknown, remain with us until the very end. For what transpired at 77 Electrician Street will compel you to reevaluate everything you perceive as real. And do not forget, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell, for tales such as this must not fade into oblivion. It was a sun-drenched Thursday in March 2023 when Richarles, a 40-year-old man with dark brown hair, clad in shorts and a t-shirt, finally saw his dream materialize. At 41, following decades dedicated to his profession as an electrical engineer for energy companies in Rio de Janeiro, he had amassed sufficient funds to purchase his own home in the countryside. The property was situated in Jaconais, a tranquil district where the air was pristine and life unfolded at a more deliberate pace. What particularly captivated him was the peculiar address, 77 Electrician Street. To an electrical engineer, it seemed almost an omen, a preordained sign. Just imagine, Richarles mused as he watched the furniture being unloaded, an electrician residing on Electrician Street. It couldn't be more serendipitous. The house was imposing, a 3-story structure built in the colonial style of the 1940s, boasting an expansive garden and encircled by centenarian trees that cast dancing shadows upon its windows. The real estate agent had remarked that the price was exceptionally good for the market. Yet Richarles raised no queries. After all, older homes consistently commanded more accessible prices. On that inaugural night, alone amidst a sea of cardboard boxes, Richarles settled into the main living room and smiled. Finally, he had his sanctuary, a place where he could dwell in tranquility, far removed from the urban maelstrom, immersing himself in his personal engineering projects. Had he known what he had truly purchased, he would have fled that very night. Richarles was a pragmatic man. An engineer by training, he invariably approached problems systematically and logically. Hence, his primary concern was to inspect the old house's electrical system. "Let's see what surprises you hold for me," he murmured, descending into the basement with his toolbox. The basement was damp and poorly lit. Richarles switched on his professional-grade flashlight and began tracing the path of the electrical cables along the walls. It was then that he noticed something peculiar. The wiring did not adhere to any known standard. Instead of conforming to ABNT technical regulations, the cables formed designs, intricate geometric patterns that sprawled across the walls as if they were symbols. "What the hell?" he whispered, tracing one of the designs on the wall with his finger. It was a perfect circle, with lines radiating from its center like sunbeams. Surrounding it were inverted triangles connected by wires that seemed to pulse with an inherent energy, even with the electricity disconnected. Richarles shook his head. It must simply be the work of an eccentric electrician who had previously worked on the house. Perhaps someone with artistic inclinations. But when he touched the central wire of the pattern, he felt a vibration, not an electrical one. He understood electricity better than anyone. It was something different, something that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. That night, Richarles awoke at 3:33 a.m. to all the house lights flickering in sequence, not in a random pattern, but precisely following the same order as the symbols he had observed in the basement. Determined to comprehend what was unfolding, Richarles resolved to investigate the house's history. The following morning, he drove to the Jaconnet property registry office. The clerk, a woman in her 60s named Donna Carmen, greeted him with a smile that swiftly morphed into concern when he uttered the address. "Electrician Street 77, she repeated, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Sir, did you actually purchase that house?" "Yes, why? Is there an issue?" Donna Carmen glanced around nervously before retrieving a yellowed folder from the archives. "Look, I shouldn't really be divulging this, but that house has a convoluted history." She opened the folder and presented several documents. "Just look. Built in 1943 by a man named Professor Augusto Voltaire. He was, how shall I put it, a scholar of the arcane." Richarles leafed through the documents, blueprints, building permits, and then photographs. Black and white images depicting the house's interior during its construction. And there it was, the very same electrical patterns he had observed in the basement. Professor Voltaire was obsessed with energy, Donna Carmen continued. Not just electrical, but other forms of energy as well. He believed he could open doors to other places. Other places? Other dimensions, sir. He used to hold gatherings at the house, rituals. They said he managed to open a portal to another world in 1947. Richarles chuckled nervously. "Donna Carmen, with all due respect, this sounds like something out of a movie." "It may be so, sir. But the fact remains that Professor Voltaire and all participants of the last ritual vanished. They were never found again. The house stood derelict for decades. When Richarles returned home that afternoon, he found all the interior doors ajar, despite being certain he had closed them. And in the basement, the electrical circuits seemed to gleam more brightly, as if they had absorbed light throughout the day. Richarles could no longer disregard the omens. As an engineer, he resolved to approach the issue scientifically. He brought his most advanced electrical measurement equipment and began mapping the entire house. The results were inexplicable. His house consumed 3 times the energy it ought to, yet there were no appliances connected to justify such expenditure. Even more perplexing, the meters detected intense electromagnetic fields emanating from the walls, precisely following the patterns of the symbols. "This makes no sense," he murmured, scrutinizing the data on his laptop. "It's as if the very structure of the house were a colossal antenna." It was then that he heard it. A voice, low, whispering, emanating from the very walls themselves. "Richarles." He froze. "Is anyone there? You have come to complete the work." The voice seemed to emanate from everywhere simultaneously. Richarles followed the sound down to the basement, where the electrical patterns now pulsed with an inherent luminosity, even with the power disconnected. "Who is speaking? Where are you?" "I am on the other side, waiting." At the center of the main circle, the air began to undulate as if it were water. For a moment, Richarles perceived something that defied all logic. A room identical to the basement, yet mirrored, where a shadowy figure observed him. "You are the chosen one, the electrician who can open the passage." Richarles recoiled, his heart pounding. "This isn't possible. This isn't real. 41 years immersed in energy. You know, that energy never dies. It merely transforms." Richarles's measurement device began to blare uncontrollably. The figures on the screen surged exponentially until the apparatus detonated in a shower of sparks. When the light subsided, the basement reverted to its former state. Yet, emblazoned upon the wall as if seared, a new symbol emerged, an intricate electrical diagram that Richarles recognized instantaneously. It was a circuit, a circuit that, if meticulously constructed, would harness the inherent patterns of the house, compelling them to operate as a sophisticated mechanism. A contrivance designed to breach portals. Richarles found himself unable to sleep, unable to eat, unable to contemplate anything beyond the scorched diagram on the basement wall. For days, he delved into the intricacies of the circuit. His years of experience in electrical engineering finally coalesced into a profound understanding he had never before conceived. The diagram was not merely a circuit, it was a veritable masterpiece of dimensional engineering. Professor Voltaire was a genius, he murmured to himself as he scrawled calculations across sheets of paper strewn over the entire table. He had discovered how to harness electricity to warp space-time. The voice now resumed its regular discourse with him. Always at 3:33 a.m., always emanating from the very walls, always a mere whisper. You comprehend. You are the sole individual capable of completing what we initiated. Who are you? Richarles inquired one evening, seated amidst the scattered diagrams in the basement. We are those who remained ensnared when the portal sealed in 1947. Professor Voltaire? Yes. And the others? We have awaited so patiently for an individual possessing your unique expertise. Richarles began to grasp the profound implications. The 1947 ritual had only partially succeeded. They had indeed opened a portal, but something had gone catastrophically awry. Individuals had been drawn into the other side, and the portal had then sealed, leaving them marooned in a parallel dimension. You possess the capacity to liberate us. You can bring the circuit to its completion. But what became of you? How have you endured after all these years? A protracted silence ensued, then a low, disconcerting chuckle. Time. It holds no sway. Here. We have evolved, adapted. We have become something more. Richarles commenced his work on the circuit, not out of a desire to aid the voices, but rather from an innate compulsion to comprehend. As an engineer, it was his very nature to unravel intricate problems. Yet with each passing day, he felt himself becoming more fundamentally altered, more intrinsically linked to the house, more attuned to the voices. And each night, the patterns emblazoned upon the walls shone with increasing luminescence. It was amidst a raging tempest that Richarles finally brought the theoretical circuit to its complete conceptualization. He knew precisely which components he understood, precisely where to install each resistor, each capacitor, each wire. Yet something troubled him, a burgeoning doubt that cast a deepening shadow over his mind. Why me? He asked the voices that night. Why specifically an electrical engineer moved into this house? The silence was different this time, heavier, more culpable. Answer me, he shouted. This wasn't a coincidence, was it? No, the voice finally admitted. We summoned you, orchestrated the events. How? We influenced the real estate agent, lowered the price, created the perfect scenario for you to move in. Richarles felt his blood run cold. You brought me here by force. We needed someone with expertise to complete what we began. And what exactly did you begin? For the first time, the air in the basement became almost palpable. The temperature plummeted, and Richarles could see his own breath. We discovered that there exist infinite dimensions, layers of reality, but we also discovered that our dimension is dying. Dying, the energy is depleting, the universe is contracting. In a few decades, everything we know will cease to exist. Richarles began to grasp the profound horror of the situation. You want to escape to another dimension. Not just escape, we want to migrate the entirety of consciousness from our reality to a new one. And for that, you need more than a portal. You need a permanent bridge. Precisely. And you are the key to constructing that bridge. But what happens to the people in the dimension you want to go to? The silence was deafening. Then a cold, humorless laugh. They will be replaced. Richarles understood with utter horror. It wasn't a rescue, it was an invasion, a dimensional invasion that would obliterate billions of innocent lives, and he was being used as the instrument to make it possible. Richarles bolted from the basement, his heart pounding. He had to get out of that house. He had to leave before it was too late. But when he reached the front door, it wouldn't open, neither would the back door, nor the windows. It was as if the house itself refused to let him leave. "You cannot leave," the voices whispered from the walls. "You are already too intrinsically linked with us." "Let me go," he screamed, pounding on the door. "Impossible. You have absorbed our energy for weeks. Now you are part of the circuit." Richarles looked at his hands and saw with horrifying clarity that his veins were faintly glowing with the same light as the electrical patterns. "What have you done to me? We have prepared you. You are now a living conduit, capable of channeling the requisite energy to open the permanent portal." Richarles raced to the basement, determined to destroy everything. He seized a hammer and began smashing the electrical conduits on the wall. But with each blow, he felt an excruciating pain, as though he were inflicting wounds upon himself. The voices shrieked in agony. "Stop! You are killing us!" "That's the plan," he yelled back, persisting in his demolition. "If you kill us, you will die, too. We are connected now." Richarles froze, his hammer suspended midair. "You're lying. Look at your hands." He looked. The glowing veins were dimming and he felt his strength ebbing. It was true. They were connected somehow. "You have two choices," the voices intoned. "Help us complete the portal and live as one of us in a new dimension. Or die with us, here, in this house, forever." Richarles sank to the floor, defeated. There was no escape. He had been manipulated from the outset, and now it was too late to flee. But then, he had an idea, a terrible and desperate idea. If he couldn't prevent the portal, perhaps he could sabotage it. Richarles feigned cooperation. For 3 days he toiled on the circuit, installing the components precisely as the voices instructed. But covertly, he was doing something different. Instead of creating a stable portal, he was constructing a dimensional bomb. As an engineer, he knew any electrical system could be overloaded. And if he could overload the portal at the precise moment of its activation, the resulting energy surge would not only obliterate the portal, it would tear apart the very fabric of the dimension surrounding the house. This meant he would perish too, but at least it would prevent the incursion. "You are almost finished," the voices whispered, exhilarated. "We can feel the energy burgeoning." "Yes," Richarles lied. "Just a few more connections." In reality, he was installing extra capacitors in series, creating a feedback loop that would induce a massive system overload. When the portal opened, the energy would backflow and detonate. "Richarles, you have accomplished something remarkable. When the portal opens, you will be the first human to witness our true form." "I can hardly wait," he said, making the final connections. His hands trembled not merely from fear, but from resolve. He thought of all the innocent lives that would be spared by his sacrifice. An entire dimension that would continue to exist because he had chosen to die. "Ready?" he finally said. "The circuit is complete. Then, it's time. Activate the system." Richarles placed his hand on the main switch. Once engaged, there would be no turning back. The portal would open, the creatures would attempt to cross, and then, explosion. "Whatever your true name may be," he whispered, "I will stop you." "What did you say?" "I said, this is for Professor Voltaire and all the others you killed." and he pulled the switch. The world erupted in light and sound. The portal gaped open like a wound in the air, and through it, Richarles witnessed the horror the voices truly embodied. They were no longer human. Decades in the parallel dimension had transmuted them into something monstrous, beings forged of pure energy and malevolence, with tendrils of electricity and eyes that were dimensional voids. "You betrayed us," they shrieked, their true voice now unveiled, a sound like 1,000 electrical cables snapping simultaneously. "I saved my own species." Richarles roared back, struggling to maintain control of the system as the capacitors began to overload. The creatures began to emerge from the portal, their impossible forms distorting reality itself around them. But Richarles had calculated precisely. The feedback loop was functioning. The energy was flowing back, and the portal began to destabilize. "You don't understand," one of the creatures shrieked, extending electrical tendrils toward him. We are what humans become when they evolve. Lies. No, we are humanity's future, and you have destroyed our only chance for survival." Richarles hesitated for a moment. What if they were telling the truth? What if he were condemning humanity instead of saving it? But then he perceived their true nature. Dimensional parasites that fed on vital energy, creatures that had consumed their own dimension to its demise and now sought to do the same to his. "You are not human," he yelled. "You are viruses." The capacitors reached critical overload. The portal began to collapse, drawing the creatures back into their dying dimension. "You have doomed both worlds," they screamed as they were dragged back. "When our dimension perishes, the shockwave will destroy yours as well. Then at least we'll die free," Richarles shouted back. And then, the explosion. The entire house was engulfed by white light. The walls dissolved. The floor disintegrated. And Richarles felt his consciousness being torn in a myriad of different directions as the dimensional explosion ripped through the fabric of reality. For a moment, he witnessed everything. All dimensions, all possibilities, the entire multiverse unfolding before him like an infinite map. And then, silence. 3 days later, firefighters discovered a perfectly circular void where the house at 77 Electrician Street once stood. There was no debris, no ash, just an immaculate emptiness, as if the house had never existed. Richarles was never found. Yet, residents of Jaconais report that on stormy nights, they can still hear his voice whispering on the wind, "Don't let them return." Official records indicate that there was never a house at that address. There was never a Professor Voltaire. There was never a 77 Electrician Street. But occasionally, when electrical engineers work late into the night, they swear they can feel a presence observing them over their shoulder. A presence that whispers, "Do not trust the energy you do not comprehend." And in physics laboratories worldwide, experiments involving dimensional portals have mysteriously failed, consistently displaying the same message on their computers. Portal blocked, RE77. For some doors, once sealed, must remain shut eternally. And some heroes, even in death, continue to safeguard the world from what lurks in the dark. This has been the tale of Richarles, the engineer who sacrificed everything to preserve our reality. A narrative that reminds us that not all energy is benevolent, and that sometimes the greatest act of valor is knowing when not to open a door. If you've made it this far, let us know in the comments. Would you make the same choice as Richarles? Would you sacrifice your life to save billions of innocent lives? Thank you for venturing through this somber night with us at the Portal of Dread. Now tell me, would you dare to face this? Share your thoughts in the comments if you can manage to sleep tonight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to receive more chilling tales every week. Sleep tight, if you can. Until the next account, good night, and until the next Portal of Dread video. Remember, some stories are mere fiction, but others are warnings. Until next time on the Portal of Dread, and be wary of the homes you choose to inhabit.